evening, everybody, and welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the SimCAR series. This is round number 3 of the season, coming to you tonight from the ever-historic Autodromo Enzo Edino Ferrari, or as it's better known as, Imola. My name is Maunz. Joining me in the commentary booth is Braun, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Adam Thompson. As I said, tonight's race is taking place at Imola, an incredibly historic track that to this day is still one of the best in the world of racing. Whether it be Formula 1 or WEC, this track tends to put on some pretty good racing, and here with the SimCAR series with a stacked field of GT3 competitors, I'm sure this race is going to be no different. Now Mike, you are a lot better familiar with this series than I am, so I want to ask you this heading in to what's going to be a very fun night of racing action. What are your thoughts at this wonderful track?
Man, this is going to be a very exciting evening. We've got, 34 cars, 33 cars that are out on track right now, going through qualifying. If the action is anything like it was last week at VIR, we are going to be in for some spicy action with these guys running GT3s around this infamous track.
Oh, it is going to be a hoot, this track. Whole lot of challenge thrown in. 17 corners in all around this circuit. Really, some of the corners are probably a bit mislabeled. You know, the motorcycles tend to have a little bit of sway in what's marked as a corner and what isn't marked as a corner. But still, 17 turns in all. Some of the most historic turns in the world of motorsports, even though they have been changed ever since the tragic events that took place here in Formula 1 all the way back in 1994. The Tamburello and Villeneuve sections to kick off the lap are still a hoot to drive around this track. Then you have the classic ones, the Tosa hairpin of turn number 7, Piratella of turn 8, Aqua Minerale of 9 and 10, Variante Alta, the chicane that may throw in a whole lot of challenge for these drivers here tonight. Just a whole lot of flair around this circuit, and all these drivers are experiencing it in this qualifying session that we're in right now. And as we're riding on board with some of the drivers up and down the field heading into that Villeneuve chicane, I'll ask you this here, Mike, what are your thoughts on this track?
I really enjoy this track myself. It is a very fun track, and it's very flowing. So as you see, we're coming down into the Villeneuve section right now, coming into Toso. I mean, this turn right here is so tempting to come in so hot, but when the track temperatures are up like it is right now at 100 degrees, this turn makes really loose. So you have to get such a good drive coming up into the Piratella area right up here. Hard on the brakes, right about the 50 board, just to coast in, let it slide out just a little bit. You're right on that edge of grip all the way down. Then you're coming down into the Minerale hairpin down in this section. Such a tough section to go under braking, and you're still trying to turn, which makes some of these cars get super sketchy. The Porsches, the Lambos, those things get so light on the rear end. And then you come hard into this chicane section here. You really got to watch getting onto those curbs. You can get slowdowns real easily. So it is such a super challenging section as we're coming down the hill right now into Rivazza. This is the way you finish your lap, down hard under braking in here, hit both of these apexes coming around here, and you have to exit this turn so good to get this long straightaway run all the way down out of the front straightaway, down the pit straight. So this is kind of about a half a lap right now we've got around this just famous track.
And even with that half lap that we're riding on board, you could just see all the challenges that are thrown in with this circuit. Ever since it was built all the way back in the 60s, where at first it was originally a street circuit, of course turned into a modern racing facility with FIA Grade 1 certification to this day, hosting F1 Grand Prix every single year, apart from last year where it got delayed because of some floods in the area. But nevertheless, this track is an absolute hoot, and all these drivers are getting a fantastic chance to experience that right now. Let's talk about this qualifying order, as we don't have a whole lot of time left to go, actually less than a minute and a half. So these drivers are starting their final laps. One driver that won't be starting their final lap is our provisional pole sitter currently in both the pro category and overall, Romain Rateau, the Frenchman in the number 23 Porsche. He set a 1-man 41.896, very good lap time from him. Meanwhile, in the AM category, a little bit farther in front of this man, Chandler Rubik, is Anthony Flores, a driver driver in the number 7 car. The number 7 Ferrari looking to impress on his car's hometown track, essentially. Currently 11th overall in this qualifying session. You can see up and down that qualifying order, incredibly close times, and even looking at it overall, the top 30 separated by a tick over 5 seconds. So this qualifying session and this series, incredibly tight, and I think that is a very good omen of what we're going to expect from the races that we have tonight.
Yeah, last week at VAR, we had some great battles. Even coming down to the last lap, we had about 4 cars coming around, battling for, if I remember correctly, 3rd, 4th, 5th, right around that area. And then we had an AM running in the top 10. So, these amateurs are no slouches, and they definitely can hold their own around here with these guys. So it is definitely going to be interesting to see how they can man their way around with these 30-plus drivers tonight.
And with the qualifying session coming to a close, that is going to do it from that qualifying session. There's a very good reason why the checkered flag means what it does. Getting into this first heat race now, 15 minutes long, so a small little bit of a sprint for these drivers to get to the checkered flag, the first checkered flag from tonight. And it's going to be Romain Rateau, the Frenchman, leading them to green. Blake Reynolds going to join him on the front row. Carter Hutchinson, the Canadian, going to make up an all-Canadian second row with Devin Horvath starting this race in 4th. I probably killed that pronunciation. Elias Rahman starting this race in 5th. Kevin Fanning going to be starting this race in P6. Ray Kingsbury in 7th. Justin Hall in P8. Christian Youngwall in P number 9. And that's going to be Matt Kinsbury rounding out your top 10.
And then in the 11th spot, you've got Anthony Flores. On the outside of him is Chandler Rubeck. In the 13th spot, you've got John Ebersol with Justin Nasir in 14th. Steven Savigny in the 15th spot. Brandon Lambert in 16th. And then you've got John Majorbanks in 17th. Brian Sohn in the 18th spot. Josh Stoltz in 19th. And rounding out that 20th spot, Daniel Goleta.
And here we go, back in the butchered pronunciations. It's going to be Marvin Mofta. I probably killed that pronunciation. Mofta starting this race in 21st. That's going to be Travis Delfromer. I probably killed that pronunciation like I did in the qualifying session before the broadcast started. Rob Edgall is going to be starting this race in 23rd. Then it's going to be Paul in the number 77 car. I'm not even going to attempt to try that last name. He's going to be starting this race in 24th. James Collin going to be starting this race in 25th. Kevin Bogart in 26th, Jason Lynn in 27th, Tim Brokaw in 28th, Nathan Fennell in 29th, Joshua Suxy in 30th, Gary Freeman in 31st, Paul Safransky starting this race in 32nd, and then Josh Ondo is going to be starting this race in 33rd, the last of the starters in this race. And it should be noted that our last place starter did not set a qualifying time, so we'll see if he actually takes to the grid in just a few moments time. And speaking of that grid, that temporary grid is lining up for the pace lap that we're just about to get started now. As you can see, that Porsche pace car is rolling. We're going to be feeling the heat literally and figuratively, Mike. I took a look at the iRacing conditions during that qualifying session. The track temperature was about 101 degrees, and that has still carried over into this first race. You think there's going to be some adverse effects of the drivers racing on a very hot racing surface?
Yeah, it's never a good combination with cold tires and a hot surface. So, coming into that first section hard under braking, these guys are really going to have to be careful coming into Tamburello at that first time by. So we'll definitely have to see how these guys roll. But one of the big things to really watch out for is after this heat race, it is an invert for your top 8. So the driver that finishes in the 8th spot will start on the pole for the main event. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying around that 8th spot to see those guys and see who can start on the point for the main event.
That is going to be a big talking point throughout this 15-minute race that we have coming up. Along with that, the manufacturer storylines. It's a Porsche front row. However, you've got Italians right behind in the form of Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Some Mustangs up there towards the front, along with a gaggle of Corvettes. About to get ready for the first race of the evening as the field is already on that gas pedal. The green flag is down. The drivers are on their way, and that's a pretty even keel start for both of our front row sitters. Rateau and Reynolds are going to be side by side, going down this start-finish not so straight straightaway, careening their way into the Tamburello chicane the first time by. It's going to be the Frenchman Romain Rateau leading them into the first chicane, the first time by in the first lap of this first race of the night, and that's a near spinner already. Steven Svegny nearly losing it heading through the Tamburello chicane. I think there's definitely contact with one of his competitors that nearly sent him around. Very well held to keep that car going in a straight line, but up at the front of the field, it is Porsche dominance with Rateau leading, Reynolds still in second, Hutcherson in P3, and you can see some battling involving our current AM leader. Flora is trying to get a move done to remain in P11. He's feeling a whole lot of pressure from his fellow AM competitor, that being Chandler Rubik in the number 29 car. You can see a little bit of Italian civil war going on here on Italian soil. The Ferrari driver versus the Lamborghini driver trying to battle for the lead in the AM category so early on into this race. We just barely ticked over the not even the halfway mark. We just barely ticked over that 1 minute mark about halfway through this first lap of the race, Mike, and we've already seen a decent amount of drama.
Yeah, no, and the guys are actually going in pretty single file right now. So there was some early drama just starting off, but everybody's settling in pretty good. But you've got Romain Rateau out in front, but your winner from race number 2 last week, Blake Reynolds, sitting in that second spot right now. Blake made a good run last week to work his way back up through the field and take the win by about 4 or 5 seconds, if I remember correctly. Carter Hutchinson sitting in that third spot right now. Carter had a spin early on at VIR and worked his way back up into the field too. As we see another car spinning out, looks like coming out of Rivazza. Looks like we got a couple.
Oh, that is a cloud of tire smoke heading through the final 2 real corners on this lap. You can see Brandon Labbert in that Corvette, and you can see that car is a little bit torn up. Here's the replay. You can see him backing it into that inside wall, and that was a Mustang around the number 9 car coming out of the second part of Rivazza. Turn number 15, I think here may be a better angle of it. This may have been the Mustang going for a spin. We're following David Coletta in the number 9 car, heading his way around that corner. You can see some contact already. It was an Audi, and you can see, yeah, Coletta just really losing it all by his lonesome, trying to avoid all the drama that went on around him. But I think that was a 3-car incident. You can see a Mustang nearly going for a sympathy spin. Heading into turn number 15, I nearly saw 2 Mustangs come to blows after that incident had already cooled off. But these drivers may be pushing it a little bit more and feeling the burn as well. You don't have to worry about fuel or anything like that. These drivers aren't going to be eyeing up pit stops, so maybe we won't see this in this 15-minute long race. These drivers are just going to be pushing it to the absolute limit, but maybe in that 45-minute race that we have coming up later on, we could see tire management play a role in that race. We'll just have to wait and see. But looking at a whole lot of storylines up and down the running order, 1 lap ago, it was Youngwall holding onto that P8 spot, which would give him the reverse pole for the feature later on tonight. However, he's actually dropped back as Justin Hall's put a move on him to slide his way into 8th. So that continuing storyline, not just at the front of the field, but for P8 as well.
Yeah, we talked about that P8 spot, Justin hanging on to it with that big old Mustang. And he is not the easiest person to pass, and it can be aggressive at times. So he is not afraid to rub elbows with people, as we see Christian Youngwall take that inside line going into Tamburello. Good move on that inside. So it looked like he had a good slingshot coming down that not so front straightaway. So a good run going on right now. But that is, like we said, that is the pivoting point of the second half of the race. The final is top 8 invert. So that 8th spot looking to get on that pole position. But out in front, we still have Rateau leading the way, and Blake Reynolds right behind him. So those top 2 still separated by about a half second, and open up just a little bit to Carter Hutchinson. So Carter doing a good job and just hanging on to that lead group. You got about 6 cars kind of nose to tail right now, leading the way as we're on lap 3 right now. 4:30 down. We still got about 11 minutes still left to go in this heat race.
Absolutely, still a whole lot of time for these drivers to try and go for some moves, whether they're over-ambitious and unsuccessful or whether they're clean and successful. We'll just have to wait and see. But right now, we're looking at a fight that may be developing here just outside the top 25. We're following Marwan Mofta, I probably killed that pronunciation again in the number 191 car. He is currently tailing Suxy in that number 27 Corvette right in front of him. Those two running, well, I wouldn't say in no man's land, but they are running in their own little fight as Colette is a little bit farther up the road and Ondo is a little bit farther back. So those two maybe get a bit racy in the not too distant future. We'll just see if Suxy gets a move put on him heading into Ravazza at the end of that fourth lap. No, it looks like they're going to stay line astern. Meanwhile, back in the top 10, this is Matt Kinsbury in the number 21 Mustang. He is currently feeling a little bit racy. Got Justin Hall right in front, and Youngwall, who's gone his way back up into that P8 spot, which again, we've pointed this out a lot, and we will continue to point it out. That will be the poll for the feature race that we have coming up later on this evening. So we've got a 4-pack of Mustangs running in those spots, contending for that reverse grid pole. So at this point, a little bit of a American Civil War going on, it must be said.
Yeah, no, it is always a spicy action coming around this track. It's, you know, we got such a diverse type of cars out here with, you know, Porsches out front, then you got a Lambo, then a couple Ferraris, and then another Porsche, and like you said, a whole pack of Ford. Oh, and the leader dropping back, Reynolds, or Berteau dropping back into that 5th spot, having a tough time coming through that chicane section there. But you can see this top 5 group all nose to stern right now. So let's see what happens as he comes down into the Minerali section, hard under braking. Oh, gets a little loose, you know, Porsche doing Porsche things. So he was able to hang on to it though, luckily.
That is really tough to have a slide like that, especially heading through one of the most challenging sections on this lap. Aqua Minerali, 2 corners with 2 entirely different challenges. Turn number 9, trying to carry that speed through there, but then you head into turn number 10, and you have to get that thing all kinds of woed up and try and prevent yourself from getting a slowdown on corner exit. I've seen many races around this circuit, including ones in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, which you can catch here every single Sunday on Slow Motion Broadcasting. I've seen races get decided with slowdowns that drivers pick up heading out of turn number 10, and we may nearly have seen that happen with Rateau. Got a little bit sideways, and these cars are really tough to try and keep going in a straight line. Of course, they have ABS and traction control. However, it's not like an open wheel car where you can just throw it around the track and steer out of any sort of slide, as we have a pass for P7 and P8 as Youngwall gets a move done on Kevin Fanning to drop Fanning back into that reverse grid pole, and right behind them, we've got Kinsbury and Hall going side by side, hang through Toza.
Yeah, that's a whole bunch of Mustangs running together right now. These Mustangs are definitely, you know, running pretty good because they got those long legs to go down that long front straightaway, but hard under braking. These cars do have a little bit of an issue trying to get slowed down, this big old heavy American muscle. But these guys, the group, are doing a fantastic job. But Fanning hanging on to that final transfer, you know, that invert position. And then Youngwall working his way up through the field right now as we see Gary Freeman dumping into the pits early. This, you know, heat race, you're not needing to pit, but it looks like he is missing the whole front clip on that car.
Ooh, boy, that's not ideal at all. Maybe my perspective was a little bit warped, but it looked like that hood and bumper were phasing in out of existence as he spins, coming out of the turn 11-12 chicane of Variante Alta. He has come down pit lane. He is going to go a lap down as this man, our leader of this race, Blake Reynolds, is going to pass him and start lap 6. We're over the halfway mark of this race, so maybe the tension's starting to grow a little bit. These drivers trying to find any sort of way they can get past their competitors, maybe playing a little bit of mind games as well. That's always big in these races, especially these short sprint races. 15 minutes, only 15 minutes long. These GT3 cars, usually you see them in very long races. 45 minutes is usually the like pretty much lower limit of seeing a GT3 car being driven around a racetrack for. 15 minutes though, that's pretty short for all these drivers, so they're pushing it like hell to try and find any sort of way to get past each other. Reynolds, he inherited the lead after a mistake from the fellow Porsche of Rateau. He hasn't really recovered as well as we maybe had in mind. He's actually losing a little bit of time to the back of Rahman in P4. So Rateau at this stage really starting to struggle. Thankfully for him, the next closest car is about 2 seconds back, but either way, Rateau not really putting on the recovery we kind of had in mind after he had that mistake.
He could be just minding his time. I mean, it's a group of 4 cars that are nose to tail right now, and what advantage is he going to get by pushing through to get through them? he's actually going to gain more advantage by sitting in the spot that he's in. And with the invert, it's going to push him farther up the grid for the final. So he might be just biding his time, watching these guys, watching their lines, and just getting ready for that final later on.
That is a very good point. We talk about this reversing of the top 8, who's going to be in the good position. Really, Romain and Rateau, well, Romain Rateau and Romain in P number 4 and 5 respectively, those two are in a pretty good spot because as it stands currently, they wouldn't really lose a whole lot of positions. Rateau would actually move up to P4, so that really does make sense. I think that's a very fair point to raise, Mike, about him maybe just being like, hey, at this point, I know I have a fast race car underneath me. I don't want to risk it and end up in some sort of collision that relegates me well down the running order for the second race where the pay window opens. Rateau at this point maybe applying a little bit of calmness behind the wheel of that number 23 Porsche. Actually, no, right as I say that, he goes for a gutsy move heading into Toza. A little bit of a last-second decision, it must be said, but side-by-side with himself and Elias Roman in that number 5 car. They're going to be side-by-side yet again, heading into Piratella. Is it going to be the Ferrari on the outside prevailing, or is Rateau in that Porsche going to get the move done? And as Elias Roman runs wide, it's going to be Rateau in that Porsche getting that P4 spot. Very nicely played, I'll tell you what. Oh, that was nearly a collision as Elias Roman went incredibly deep, heading into Aqua Minerale, and I think there's a matter of inches separating himself from a pretty bad collision with Rateau.
Yeah, that was he was really offline at the top of that hill, and then coming down, he just may have pushed it a little too hot coming through there and had to run it off. So, not sure if he ended up with a slowdown, but he's still running pretty good with these guys, and he does not want to lose any more ground. He definitely does not want to slide out and go back into that 9th or 10th spot, but he is under some heavy pressure right now from Christian Youngwall in that big throaty Mustang, and also Ray Kingsbury sitting there in that Porsche. So you've got 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th all running nose to tail as they come down the front straightaway right now. 3 minutes left on the clock, so just enough time to get about 2 laps in. So these guys need to start making some moves if they're looking to move up.
Elias Roman at this point, he is in the midst of a hornet's nest, and he is hoping not to get in the middle of it. Otherwise, he is going to be in for a world of hurt. P5 at the moment. For all we know, he could hold on to that P5 spot, but it could be as far back as just barely sneaking his way inside the top 10. We really don't know. I've seen some very dramatic conclusions to races in GT3 races and races here at Imola, and considering the drama that we've seen up and down this running order, I would not be too shocked if we see Elias Roman possibly run into some trouble. He is starting to pull away, though, it must be said, in front of Kingsbury, currently stretching that gap to about 0.6 of a second, heading in to Piratella for what we think is probably going to be one of the final times. Not a whole lot of time left on the clock for these drivers, so they're starting to slowly run out of time. Less than 2 minutes left to go in this 15-minute race, so I think they may be coming a white flag this time by, possibly. I'm not too sure. I was never good at math class as a kid, but Blake Reynolds looking to try and hold off any sort of challenge he can from Hutcherson right behind those two, covered by about 1/4 of a second, and breaking away from everyone else. Horvath in P3, he's about a second back of these two, so unless there's some sort of contact, he probably won't be a major factor in the finish and deciding factors towards the end of this race. And Rateau a little bit farther back as well. He's running in effectively no man's land in P4, and that white flag is in the air. 1 lap to go from this first race of the evening from round number 3 of SimCAR, and it's Reynolds holding on to the lead at the moment in that number 66 Porsche. However, he's got that 63 Lamborghini of Carter Hutchinson right behind, looking to pick up the pieces if anything happens to Blake Reynolds. He needs to put together a very good final lap of this race. He inherited the lead after a mistake from another Porsche of Rateau. We'll just see if he can hold on to it. Hutcherson feeling very, very bold. It looked like he was going to try and put 2 wheels into the dirt heading into Toza to try and get that move done to take the lead of the race. Will Hutcherson go for a balls-to-the-wall ballsy move, or is he going to be a little bit more reserved, thinking that he's in a very good position for the championship? We'll just have to wait and see. Is it going to be Reynolds, or is it going to be Hutcherson? They're heading into Aqua Minerale for the final time in this first race of the evening. They don't have to worry about any cars in front of them. The next car is heading through Ravazza right now as a spinner for the number 70 27 of pole. Ooh, and oh my god, that was nearly a collision with a Mustang arriving on scene. Thankfully, that incident clears itself. That was heading out of Villeneuve for the final time, but back at the front of the field now, Hutcherson still within striking distance of Reynolds. It must be noted that Horvath has actually closed that gap a teeny tiny bit. Hutcherson, meanwhile, I don't think he's going to be close enough to get that move done on Blake Reynolds to take the win in the first race of the evening, and rounding their way around Ravazza for the final time, about to enter Variante Bassa on that start finish. Not so straight away. It's going to be the Porsche and the P2 starter of Blake Reynolds taking the checkered flag to win the first race of this evening. Hutcherson going to be right behind him in P2. Horvath, Rateau, and Fanning going to round out your top 5. And for the reverse grid pole, it is going to be friend of the broadcast, Justin Hull, in that number 36 car, who's going to be starting this second race we have coming up in a few minutes time from the pole. And it's going to be an all Ford front 4. That is going to be a spectacle. That is going to bring out patriotism in all of us. As you can see, there were elbows busted out in that fight right towards the tail end of the top 5. Elias Roman making contact, and that was a very sketchy rejoin, it must be said, from Elias Roman. What do you make of that incident there?
Yeah, that's probably just out of pure frustration. I mean, I mean, he got tapped from behind, but that is the second time in probably 3 laps that he got pushed offline, and it just a tough rejoin for him. He was running in that top 8 and that top invert area, and to get knocked down and go, all the way down to the end of the field now, a tough break for Elias.
Tough stuff for him. He is going to start well farther back than he was probably expecting. At one point not very long ago, we were saying that he and Rateau were going to be fighting for the, I won't say the nothing positions. It's not the nothing positions. It's the positions where you don't really gain or lose a whole lot, P4 and P5. However, as it shows you how quickly things can change in the world of racing, right as it was looking like he was on track for a top 4 or top 5 finish, it just all comes to blows. And actually, we'll take a look at the championship standings, because we didn't get a chance to look at that before the start of that first race. Here's the AM standings. Chandler Rubik is leading at currently 101 points on the board. Anthony Flores, who's actually the top running AM driver in that first race of the evening, he is in P2 in the number 7 car, 86 points on the board. Ebersol in 3rd, Bogart in 4th, and then the name that will foil me, Mofta starting, well, not starting, he is currently P5 in the AM standings coming into this round. And here are the pros. Carter Hutchinson at the front, Blake Reynolds in P2, Christian Youngwall in 3rd. Cody Cosgrove, who I don't believe is racing with us unless I'm very much mistaken, he's in 4th. Ray Kinsbury, who got involved in that incident, he is in 5th in the pro standings. Romain Rateau in 6th. He is going to try and look to gain some sort of ground on his adversaries. What we saw in the early stages of that first race is that Romain Rateau has a very fast race car under him. The Mecha Esports car was definitely cooking it in the early stages. I'm curious now, as we have a pretty extended warm-up before the start of this second race. What do you think of Rateau, Mike? What do you think he can possibly try and irk out a win in this race? I mean, there's a whole lot of different factors compared to the 15-minute race we just had, but what do you think of Rateau?
He last week he did run really well. He was towards the front of the field the entire time. The Porsche definitely seems like it's a quicker car here for these guys, but it is one that will bite you if you let it. It's got that that engine sitting way in the back of it, and these tight, hard braking turns where you're, and then especially when you're trying to come in through Ravazza, where you're trying to carry as much speed through that double apex before the start finish line. If you try pushing too hard, that rear motor wants to chase you around and starts to lead you through, which is not ideal trying to make it down that front straightaway. But you want to make sure you have good traction coming out of there and lead down that front straight. So, Romain did a great job last week. We got Blake Reynolds, Carter Hutchinson. There is no lack of driver ability on that top of the grid right now.
Oh, there is no doubt that the drivers at the north end of the field are very, very skilled. And just looking through the field that we had, it should be noted that just the manufacturer diversity that we have in this series, it's really been nice to see over the past, reckon to say the past 12 months in iRacing, the evolution of the GT3 field in this sim or game or whatever you want to call it. I feel like calling it a game. I may have the other pitchforks out for me after this broadcast, but it's been really nice to see the new cars and the new life get put in to the GT3 class here in iRacing. Of course, had the other new Porsche. That was actually one of the older of the cars that we have here now. The Lamborghini, another classic here in the world of iRacing. He had the Mustang and the Corvette that just came out not very long ago. He had that Ferrari, the revamped new Ferrari. I believe it's a 288 GT3 that came out, I would say, towards the end of last year. I think season 3 or season 4 of 2023. Then you also have the likes of the new refreshed Audi. I mean, just looking up and down this field, you've got Mustangs, you've got Audis, you've got Corvettes, you've got Porsches, you've got Ferraris, you've got Lamborghinis, you've got Audis. Just a whole lot of diversity when it comes to the manufacturers in this series. I don't know about you, Mike, but seeing a whole bunch of different race cars out there is always nice to see.
No, absolutely, and like you said, it is good to see the branching out of the GT3s, because for so long it just seemed like they got stale and they weren't adding any new cars. But when they threw out the Mustang and the Corvette, I mean, it just brought new life to this class. And I'm looking forward to see what they come out, because there's still plenty of GT3s that are currently on the real IMSA grid, on the WEC and everything, and just still plenty of other cars that they could try. We've got the Lexus, which, I mean, God, that car has been out for how many years, and it still hasn't changed, but that thing is still running up front with Vassar Sullivan. So, there's still plenty of other cars out there. We got the revamped Audi, which was one of my exciting drops, because that's one of my favorite cars to run. But, the Corvette is probably one of the best braking GT3s of all of them right now, and that's why you see a lot of these guys taking to the Corvette and just really making a dive bomb move on guys and able to hold it, because of that braking on that car is so good.
I gotta say, of all the cars that have incredibly good brakes, I gotta imagine that here at Imola is probably the best track to have a car like that. Lots of heavy braking zone and lots of good opportunities to try and sneak a wheel down the inside. So they kind of led us to be a fool. They played us like a fiddle, as the warm-up session has been called halfway through. It's going to be Justin Hall leading them to green in this second race of the evening, 45 minutes in length compared to the 15-minute race that we just had. Matt Kinsbury going to join him on the front row, Christian Youngwall in third, Kevin Fanning in P4, Roman Rateau in 5th, Devon Horvath in P number 6. That's going to be Carter Hutchison in P7. Blake Reynolds, who took the checkered flag, the top of the drivers in that first race, is going to be starting this race in P8. Ray Kinsbury, who was in one of those top 8 spots, kind of got messed up with an incident later on in that race. He's going to be starting in 9th, and Justin L. Nasir is going to be rounding out your top 10.
And running in the 11th spot will be Chandler Rubeck. And then you've got John Marchbanks in the 12th spot. And in the 13th spot, you've got John Ebersol with Anthony Flores in the 14th spot. Elias Romain in 15th. Steven Savegny in the 16th spot. Travis DeFlumer in 17th. John Stoltz in 18th. Then James Collins in the 19th spot. And rounding out the 20th is Devin Bogart.
And here we go, P21, Tim Brokaw, P22, David Coletta, Marwan Mofta going to be starting this race in 23rd. I think I've finally gotten that pronunciation down right, and you can see the drivers are already on this pace lap. A whole lot of, I feel like it would have been nice if we had those final 10 minutes of warm-up so we can give the viewers a whole lot of stuff to think about heading into this 45-minute long race. Hot track temperatures, still, you got to keep those in mind. These drivers, they won't try and risk it for pits. They don't have to do it fuel-wise, and they're definitely not going to do it tire-wise. I'm sure these drivers are just going to try and tough it out for the 45-minute race we have coming up here at a track which is usually somewhat difficult on the tires. We also have to keep in mind, it is an all-American front two rows. Mustangs occupying the north end of the field. You've also got the likes of Rateau, who are following in fifth. The top running of the non-American cars in that Porsche. He is going to look for some sort of redemption after the incident that really derailed his chances of winning the first race this evening. He is going to try and be on the comeback tour for this 45-minute race that we have starting in just a few moments' time. Those 15 minutes were hectic. Let's see what this 45-minute race has in store. The green flag is out and the drivers are on their way, and it's a very good start from our pole sitter, Justin Hall. He is going to try and extend that gap over Kingsbury. It was a very early jump, it must be said, from the driver of the number 36 Mustang. However, he is going to have a comfortable lead heading into turn number one. Meanwhile, you've got Youngwill and Kingsbury going side by side, heading through the Tamburello chicane to kick off this race. Lots of drivers going side by side up and down the field. At the north end of the field, unlike what we saw in the beginning of that 15-minute long race, we haven't seen anyone go for a half spin yet. Keyword being yet. These drivers are keeping it clean and keeping it to themselves for now, but they're definitely looking to try and pick up the pieces and get dicey at this early stage of the race. Rateau, the driver who we think could possibly be one of the favorites heading into this 45-minute race, is still in P5. I think we may have had our first casualty. I think Savinji is probably dropping down the running order. I can see him now dicing with Elias Rahman for P13 and P14. Right now we've got a fight between Nasir going side by side. That was some hard racing heading through Piratella. I apologize, Adam, for cutting away from that fight. But right now it's pretty close between these two. Nasir running 10th in that Corvette, and Flores right behind the leading AM driver in that Ferrari, as we have an off-track moment from Brandon Lambert heading through Aqua Minerale. He's running down the running order, and let's take a look to see what happened here, Mike.
Looks like he's just coming down here, and like we talked about earlier, this is a really strange braking zone. You want to get it while you're going straight, and he just got checked up a little bit. I don't know if the curb caught him a little bit, but it can be definitely really tricky if you try to turn into that first part under braking, and it gets a little light on that tail end. But as we go back up front with Justin Hall lead the way right now, top four cars, all Mustangs, leading the way right now. Hall, Youngwall, Kingsbury, and Fanning all holding it down for that American contingency. But you've got Rateau in that Porsche. Romain really was really quick in that first sector, in that first session, with one small little bobble that cost him to drop him back in the field. But you really don't want to count out Carter Hutchinson and Blake Reynolds. They're sitting back there kind of lurking right now and trying to make it go. But as you see, Romain try that outside line coming around Toza, and it just couldn't quite stick it. So here he's flashing his lights, trying to run a little distraction, maybe trying to get around on that inside of Kevin Fanning. But we'll see how they go as they work their way around, as we just get into the 2:30 down. So plenty of time still to go.
Yeah, a whole lot of time for these drivers to get even more dicey than they already have. Rateau already trying to play the mind games with Fanning. Those two nearly went side by side on the exit of Tosa. However, Rateau just didn't have a good enough exit to really get that move done. However, that is still a very close fight. You can see with the wonderful graphics that we have here on slow motion, the field, there is pretty much no big gap all up and down the field. All the times that you see right now, they're either in the yellow or in the orange, are battles, and we've got them all up and down the field, including one with Anthony Flores, who gets a move done on the Corvette of Nasir heading in to Ravazza. He moves up a spot, and Rateau has had a collision. You can see him stopped on the outside of the track, and I believe, yeah, that's Horvath as another car piles into that. Two cars have come together coming out of Ravazza, and you can see Romain Rateau's battered and bruised Porsche GT3 number 23 car is going to be coming down pit lane to try and repair that damage, and here we think may have been it. Rateau tried to get a move done on the Mustang, but just wasn't close enough, and you can see contact coming out of the corner. Rateau maybe desperately trying to block off something. Hold the brakes, hold the brakes. Oh, he held the brakes. However, that Mustang came in like a bat out of hell and sadly just cleared out Rateau. Thankfully, these drivers, I believe, do have a fast repair at their disposal, so they're going to be rejoining the track in due course. Rateau has rejoined this race, although albeit well down in 28th. I don't know, what do you make of that incident, Mike? It looked like fairly sort of racing stuff, with Rateau being a little bit impatient.
Yeah, it was one of those racing deals, and it might have also been he was hard under brakes coming into that first part of Rivazza and got the tires a little warm and got a little sketchy, but it looks like he just kind of tried to go on that exit and get on the front side and get tangled up and get right fendered onto that outside wall. But that is the commentator curse that we call for Romain Rateau. We're talking him up, and see how good he's going to do, and we put a spotlight on him, and something happens. But as you go on right now, as you see Anthony Flores, that is your AM leader right now. And the biggest easy way to tell the difference between the AMs and the pros is the AMs have that green mirror and also green wingtips and that green header. Oh, and Anthony gets spun out and coming into the front straightaway. As we are just commentator cursed, Anthony Flores gets spun out.
Ooh, be careful here on the rejoin, Anthony. The commentator's jinx striking again here on slow motion. That is going to hurt him a heck of a lot. And here is a replay to see exactly what happened with Flores. You can see Nasir all over the back of him, trying to get a good exit coming out of Rivazza onto that start finish, not so straight straightaway, and he just misjudged it quite badly there. I mean, you can't really, it's tough to say. I am very thankful that I'm not working race control on this night, but oh, that's tough stuff between both of those drivers. I'm sure Nasir is not feeling very pleased with how things shook out in all of that. I think he actually lost out on a little bit of time as well. And of course, Flores dropping well down the running order, all the way down to 22nd as things stand currently. And I think really all that started off with just Nasir trying to get a good exit coming out of that corner onto that start finish, not so straight away. Even though you have the chicanes of Tamburello and Villeneuve breaking up what used to be a long flat-out blast that extended pretty much throughout half of this racetrack, that is still a very important flat-out section of this race course. So trying to get a good exit coming out of Rivazza, especially in a race like this with a pack this tight, is really key to your success.
Yeah, and honestly, it looked like Anthony got a little loose just coming into that last section of Rivazza, trying to get that good drive out. And I think Nasir just barely got into the back of him. I don't think it was anything malicious at all, but it just tough break for him as he was leading that amateur division. But back out in front, top two are starting to pull away. Justin Hall and Christian Youngwall leading the way, and then you got a little bit of a gap back to that third Mustang of Matt Kingsbury. Carter Hutchinson working his way up into the fourth spot now. So that's going to be probably the position to really watch for, is that Lambo. Carter Hutchinson definitely has that Lambo under lock and really ran good at VIR last week. And let's see if he can make his way through, as he already got by Kevin Fanning in that other Mustang. But good. Blake won last week. So this is your amateur from last week in... No, wasn't it Chandler that won last week? If I remember correctly, it was the other Lamborghini. So production doing a great job keeping that in my ear and feeding false information. But we're in good shape. That's why we don't put him back up in the booth anymore. Yeah. So Chandler Rubeck, your AM winner last week, running in the 10th spot right now. So doing a great job and holding it down with that second Lambo out there. Teammate to Carter Hutchinson. So those two working it out and getting through the field. But I really think that the spotlight right now, not to put another commentator curse on, is Carter Hutchinson. Sitting in that fourth spot, I really look for him to make his way up the field and see if he can close that gap to that battle of Mustangs up front.
And we're going to see him go spinning off the track in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nope. I mean, considering the section of the track that he's on, I feel like he'd have to be a professional to spin out heading through the final few corners on this lap. Blake Reynolds won last time out in the pro category. Oh, I definitely would have been. I've crashed in that section before, so I can't really judge at all. Blake Reynolds won last time out at VIR, and Mike, I can't really join in on the production hauler slander, mainly because I'm still a new hire here on slow motion. But Blake Reynolds putting on a pretty good show currently, still running in 7th, and he is in the midst of that fight right behind Hutcherson. I mean, all these drivers are putting on some pretty good shows at the moment. All different bunch of cars too, it must be said. You've got a Lambo, you've got a Ford, and you've got two Porsches, along with a Corvette a little bit farther in tow. So a little slice of everything that GT3 racing has to offer nowadays here in the world of iRacing. Brandon Lambert has put on a pretty good recovery drive. He's now running in P19, and the last time we saw him, he went for a spin in the early stages and was running down in, I believe, about 28th. He was definitely in the 20s. That's for darn sure. He's put on a pretty good recovery drive, is now running just inside the top 20, and looking to maybe size up a move on Mafta in the not too distant future. Those two covered by about a half a second, heading through Aqua Minerale as Mafta uses as much real estate as he possibly can coming out of Aqua Minerale. That's going to hurt him though. I think he may have to serve a slowdown. You can see Lambert gets that move done heading into Variante Alta, and I do very much believe that Mafta picked up a slowdown from all of that. You can use some liberties around this racetrack. However, if you get a little bit too greedy, you will get hit by that silver bullet, and sadly, I think that's just what happened there. Looking up and down the field, so far we only have, I believe, one retirement, that being the driver running in 30th, whose name pronunciation I still do not... Marchbanks, yes, there we go. Marchbanks running down in 30th. He is out of the session. He is left, so he is going to be one of the first retirements from this race meeting thus far. Rateau running down in 27th. He is going to be on the comeback tour and maybe getting a move done on Ondo in the not-too-distant future to slide his way up into 22nd. But Rateau, one of our favorites coming into this second race of the evening, ran into some trouble early on. He's repaired that race car, but still, he is going to be feeling the burn and trying to cut his way back through the field like a hot knife through butter. He's got a very fast race car, and he may have some slightly fresher tires compared to some of the people around it. Actually, no, I will retract that statement. I believe he only came in for the faster pair, but either way, Rateau, he is going to be a man on a mission. I don't think he's going to be able to challenge this man, Justin Hall, for the race lead and win. However, we could see him possibly snag his way back into the top 20 in the not-too-distant future. What do you think, Mike?
No, absolutely. I really think that he's going to probably dip up into that 15th spot or so is where I see it ending. But speaking of a guy on a mission right now, Blake Reynolds working his way up and getting past Kevin Flanagan up into the 5th spot. So Blake was really on a mission last week at VIR and just ran away and hid from these guys. He just kind of waited his time out at the beginning of the race, kind of paced himself. Then he ran down, if I remember correctly, Romain, and it was about a 4-second gap, and all of a sudden he was on his back bumper. So at any time, Blake can turn it on. So these Mustangs better get going and get moving. So they are starting to get a little hot. So these tires definitely get a little warm, and Justin getting a little sketchy there. Here comes Youngwall around the inside. Christian trying to get by, coming in to the Villeneuve area here. And Christian Youngwall leading the way right now. Justin Hall dropping back into second. And the third spot is still Matt Kingsbury. Carter Hutchinson closing that gap in that Lamborghini. And look right behind him, Blake Reynolds in the 5th spot.
That was some pretty textbook stuff, it must be said, from Youngwall to take the lead of this race. Again, we are still early doors right now, to invoke a little bit of British terminology here on this American broadcast with all American people working on it. 13 minutes in, 45 minutes in total. So Youngwall putting on a pretty clean move, it must be said, to take the lead of this race. And Hall was definitely struggling for grip. You could see him skidding like a declawed cat climbing up an igloo, heading through Tamburello. He was struggling a lot. He actually dipped 2 wheels off into the dirt coming out of turn number 4, the final part of that Tamburello chicane. He was really struggling for grip, and it goes back to the point that we mentioned before the start of this broadcast about like tire management and everything like that. The track still hot. The track temperature over 101 degrees, I believe, still same as it was in the first race, same as it was in the qualifying session, I believe same as it was in the warm-up. iRacing weather ain't changing at all at the virtual version of Imola here in iRacing, and they were starting to feel the burn. Hall still, I mean, keeping a decent margin between himself and Youngwall, it must be said, currently about a half a second separating the two of them, but you can see last time by that pretty evenly matched pace-wise. And thank you very much, Adam, for the note on screen. Declawed cat skidding off an igloo. Well, it's I don't know. It's 9:58 here on the East Coast. I don't know, maybe some my mind is doing some weird tricks on me to bring in some very strange analogies on this broadcast. Mike, can you save this?
There is really no saving it right now, but I don't know. It was kind of hard to come after that one, but it was a great analogy because it really is what happened. I mean, Justin just overcooked the tires. It looks like he's doing it again. Gets off track a little bit, and he is really trying to push the heck out of this Mustang to try to stay in touch with Christian in that lead spot. But here it comes Chandler Rubeck, your amp guy right now in the 10th spot, and he has a pretty wicked paint job right behind him of Justin Nasir, our Canadian friend running that Corvette. That we were talking about this paint in the pre-production of just all the detail that kind of went into this thing. It is a trading paint to paint, but it is pretty impressive to see that, and it just really it's not a normal racing paint scheme that you see in a league race like this.
I feel like if I got some very special substances from the streets of Philadelphia at 10 o'clock at night, this would be an even more interesting view looking at this car. Very odd looking, it must be said, bringing me back to the 80s. It is a slice of 80s American power too. It's always nice to see a front-running Corvette, even though he's running down in 11th as things stand currently. Considering how big this field is though, P11 still in the upper third of this field, so I'll count him as a front-runner at this point. Speaking of one of the front runners, the winner of the first race of the evening and the winner of last time out at VIR, Reynolds is still running in 5th, with Hutcherson actually a little bit closer than he was at one point before. Hutcherson, I feel like the last time we looked at this fight, or maybe a few times ago, Hutcherson was actually extending that gap a teeny tiny bit. It was probably about 0.8 of a second, a little bit farther than it is now, but I think Hutcherson has actually lost out on a little bit of a time, and this may be the reason why. We're taking a look at a replay heading into turn number 1, getting the move done on the Mustang to slot his way up into another position. That was a move done on Matt Kinsbury heading into the Tamburello chicane, so maybe that could be the reason why it just feels a little bit closer than it once was. Hutcherson now running in 3rd, Kingsbury in 4th, and Reynolds now with the car between himself and Hutcherson. He's possibly going to try and use that slipstream, that Ford Mustang. That's a pretty big race car compared to some of the other ones up and down this field. It punches a pretty big hole in the air, so I'm sure the slipstream that Reynolds is getting in that number 66 Porsche is pretty strong at this point. So maybe, as much as he can't see his rival, I feel like Reynolds is probably quite happy with the position he finds himself in right now.
Yeah, he's going to sit here through the second part of Rivata, just kind of sit right on that back bumper and pull that draft. He will make a slingshot move going into turn 1. There's just no chance that he is not going to do this. So as you can see him closing in, coming across the start-finish line, closing that gap little by little. But that Mustang really holding its own right now. That's pretty surprising on how much power that thing is really able to hold that line. I totally thought that move was done and dusted for him. But Blake's going to have to do it under braking. He's really going to have to get close, make a move, and go by. But look it up into the 3rd spot. 3rd spot, Carter Hutchinson on that back bumper of Justin Hall. Justin Hall sweating those rear tires right off that car. And Hutchinson is on his back wing, giving him a little push up the hill right now. So Carter looking for a place to get by as they're coming into, one of the harder braking zones. So if Justin is having some challenges with those hot rear tires, this could be where it's going to show up as he's trying to push down into Agua Minerale and see if he can hang on to it and able to hold it. But Carter just hanging his time, waiting for a chance to get by. But Blake Reynolds, he's sitting back there.
Yeah, he really needs to get a move on at this point. You need to make hay while the sun is shining, and you need to strike while the iron's hot. That was a big snap from Hall coming out of Variante Alta. He was all kinds of crossed up coming off of the corner. So at this point, this has turned this fight into a frickin' hornet's nest. You can see 4 cars covered by barely any air as the Mustangs make contact heading into Ravazza, with Justin Hall getting a hip check from Matt Kinsbury as he got the move done. Hall getting shoved off the racetrack, losing even more spots, now careening his way down into 7th. Disastrous stuff from Hall, and I think he picked up some sort of damage from that as he's now come into the pits, maybe picked up some sort of meatball flag possibly, as that was a big snap coming out of the corner. Very nicely held from Hall, however, in just a few moments time, things will go from not ideal to bad to even worse. You can see it's just 2 cars, maybe a little bit of netcode involved in that as well. I feel like there's about a foot of air separating those 2 cars as they went into Ravazza. Oh, that's still, it's gonna hurt both of those drivers. I feel Kingsbury may have a little bit of damage in that because iRacing sometimes with netcode contact, I mean, if it put Hall down pit lane as he's up on jack stands, maybe getting some new tires and definitely trying to repair some sort of damage he picked up in that incident, I'm curious if Kingsbury picked up some damage as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It didn't look like it was a hard enough impact to do that, but maybe the netcode is what caused Justin to have to come in and use that fast repair. But, Christian Youngwall out in front, now the only Mustang in the top 3, trying to hold it down. But as we're on board with Matt Kingsbury as he comes into the chicane section, and that's the car that doesn't look like there's any damage on the side of that car. So I wonder if it was, like we talked about, just a little bit of netcode and Justin Hall just getting the short end of the stick. Maybe it did some damage to the wheel tie rod, something, I don't know. But look at this, he's got Blake Reynolds on the back bumper now of Carter Hutchinson. This is going to be a fantastic battle, but if these guys are not careful, your leader out there, Christian Youngwall, is just sitting there with about 2.5 second advantage right now. And if these guys start battling, it's going to open up even more. So as you see, Blake Reynolds kind of taking a look on that inside coming into turn 1, but thought wiser, and he's just going to bide his time as we're just coming up to 21 minutes down. So we still got a lot of race to go.
And just wrapping a bow on the storyline surrounding that Hall and Kingsbury incident, Hall has actually left the session, so he is going to be down in 29th. Just the latest retirement from this race, which hasn't been too attrition-packed. However, it has been action-packed. That is for darn sure. In the AM category, it is this man, Chandler Rubik, leading it in that Lamborghini. Number 29 car running in P9 overall, and maybe trying to get a move done in the not-too-distant future on 70 and in P number 8 right now. That Corvette, the 00, a little bit farther up the road, separated by about 2 car lengths, heading into Piratella right now. We'll keep our eyes on this fight. A lot of fights developing all up and down the field, but I think the one that we're probably the most interested in, Mike, is that fight going on between Hutcherson and, actually no, Rice, I say that, I was gonna say that the fight between Ruprecht and 70 was probably going to be a little bit tame. Right as I say that, 70 runs off the track, heading through Aqua Minerale. We may be able to find a replay to see exactly what happened here, and here it is. We're following Ruprecht, who's actually the one that gained the most in all of that. It clipped the grass a little bit on entry, and that just sent him for a one-way ticket off into the runoff area through turn number 10, dipped a wheel off into the dirt, and sadly for him, it just sent him off the circuit. Not ideal for the driver of the Corvette, as now, at one point, he was trying to deal with a Lamborghini right behind. He's now got another Corvette about 1 second back.
Yeah, no, it was a tough break for him, but he did a great job on hanging on to it. But Ron, just so you're aware, do never talk about taking tires off the track. So the production booth does not like it when we talk about that and tires slipping or doing any other adjective off the track. So we'll just leave it at that. If you'd like some more information, go back to watch last week's race, and you'll get some good information on that. But out in front, you still got Youngwall leading the way. Christian Youngwall out in front, but it is definitely losing time. Carter Hutchinson closing that gap, and he is bringing Blake Reynolds with him. So you can see the battle time up there, and you can see the lap times. Youngwall with a 43.1, Hutchinson with a 42.7. So, I mean, that is a good 4/10 difference right there, closing that gap as they're down within 1 second now. So this is going to get to be a very spicy race. But you've got, Hutchinson and Reynolds, but, not too far behind is that other Mustang, Matt Kingsbury, hanging on and just hanging on to that toe of that big old huge back wing of Blake. So it could be a top 4 battle here anytime.
I feel like it's definitely coming to that at this point. 23 coming up to 24 minutes on the clock of this 45-minute long race, and these four are really converging on each other. That gap between Youngwall and Hutcherson has diminished as of late. We're gonna see what lap times they set this time by, but I feel like the gap has gone down yet again. We'll check the lap times for proof. 133.6 for Youngwall, 142.8 for Hutcherson, so 0.8 of a second on that lap alone. This is going to get incredibly tense between all of these cars. Youngwall looking to try and hold off any sort of challenge. Hutcherson, meanwhile, he is going to be feeling really racy. Reynolds looking to pick up the double. Blake Reynolds won that 15-minute race that we had earlier. He is going to try and go 2 for 2 tonight. Will he be able to do it, though, is the real question. At this point, the front four runners, they're covered by barely any air. Let's talk about this man, Brandon Lambert. He has continued to put on a very good recovery. Spun earlier on in the race, then he broke his way back into the top 20, and now he's trying to get a move done on Coletta around the outside, heading into the Villeneuve chicane. That is some bold stuff from Brandon Lambert. He's going to stick it down the inside, and maybe a little bit of argy-bargy action between himself and the driver of the number 10 Mustang, but he gets a move done, heading through Toza. Very nicely played for Brandon Lambert, who now slips his way into P number 11. Very nicely played from the driver of the 46 Corvette. But I think back towards the front of the field, it's getting racy even more. Youngwall, the gap between Youngwall and Hutcherson is now only 0.7 of a second. That slipstream is getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger with every passing moment for Hutcherson. The air coming off of the back of Youngwall is getting hotter, and it is getting thinner as well. Reynolds as well, he is close. He is within striking distance if there's some sort of drama that leads to these two coming together. And as you pointed out, Mike, gotta keep our eyes out for Kingsbury at this point, running in fourth in that number 21 Ford Mustang. He's within striking distance as well. Currently trying to do the math in my head. Well, pretty much no time separating all of them. About a half a second between all of them right now. You could cover the front four with a blanket currently. This is getting really, really, really exciting at this point, and I feel like we're coming to a crescendo in the not too distant future as that gap between Youngwall and Hutcherson has diminished, and Youngwall ran wide coming out of the Villeneuve chicane. This may be Carter Hutchinson's opportunity. The driver of the Lamborghini looking to stick one on the Mustang. They're about to enter Piratella in the not too distant future. At this point, it's a matter of who is going to bite first. Is Hutcherson going to get that move done on Youngwall, or is Reynolds going to try not and wait as long as Hutcherson may do? Is it going to be Hutcherson getting the move done on Youngwall? Is it going to be Reynolds trying to get the move done on Hutcherson? Or is Kingsbury going to act as a spoiler in that P4 spot? At this point, it is so hard to predict how things are going to shake out because all the drivers running at the north end of the field have their own strengths and weaknesses, and they're all running as fast as they possibly can.
Yeah, the top four are super close right now as we are on board with Carter Hutchinson just over his right front tire, switching over to the left front as we're coming down into Ravazza section here. That first left-hander, Carter looking to get nice and close to this Mustang, try to get a slipstream off of that big old American muscle. But as we saw earlier, those Mustangs really pull hard down this not-so-front straightaway. But, he is able to hang on. Last time by, Youngwall with a 43.3, Carter with a 43.1, Blake Reynolds with a 43 flat, and Matt Kingsbury with a 40 feet flat as well. But lurking back there in that fifth spot, we've got the other Kingsbury, Ray Kingsbury. If anything happens to these guys, Ray could actually really take a real great chance of making some points here. But, as we're talking about, like, recovery drives and whatnot, but back in the 19th spot, Romain Brateau, that was the guy that we saw earlier running in and having some problems. He's all the way up into the 19th spot already. So he was down into almost 30th after that early incident, after coming into the pits, getting that fast repair, but he is making his recovery drive right now and looking to close that gap on Brian Stone in that one and only Audi we have in the field right now. But good recovery drive from Romain and looking to move his way up into the field to collect some more points.
Despite the fact that the graphic we have says that he's 14 positions down from where he started in this race, he has just put on a very good showing. And here we go, here we go, here we go. Youngwall, Hutcherson side by side, heading into Variante Alta. You don't see drivers go side by side, heading through the tightest section of racetrack on this entire lap. Even the pit lane is less narrow than that, but Hutcherson feeling really bold at this point, and I think he's feeling the pressure. He needs to get a move done on here. He needs to try and take a risk. Side by side, heading into Ravazza, contact being made, and that is going to slow him up. Here comes Blake Reynolds, trying to get that move done on the outside in that Porsche, dipping wheels off into the dirt. Coming out of the final corner, they're going to be side by side, going down this start flat out blast to begin lap number 19. Youngwall beginning to check out as the driver's right behind him. Trade blows like it's going out of style. Reynolds is going to be able to snag P2. Kingsbury looking to get a move done on Hutcherson for that final podium position, and he's gonna get the move done successfully in that Mustang. Beautiful stuff from Matt Kingsbury in the number 21 Ford GT3 Mustang to take that final podium position, and commiserations go out to Carter Hutchison. It's still not over yet though. We're coming to 15 minutes left in this race. Think of all the drama we had in that 15-minute long sprint race, and add in and added 30 minutes of drama, 30 minutes of storylines, and 30 minutes of tension on to that. These drivers are going to be fighting like hell towards the end of this race, and I think there's been some drama up at the front, as now there's a pretty significant gap separating the drivers running at the north end of the field. Yeah, you can see Youngwall and Reynolds, they're covered. You can cover those cars with a blanket. However, there's a gap developing between Reynolds and Kingsbury. Those two are losing out on time. Hutcherson, he is going to be kicking himself after what happened, trying to take the lead of the race. And speaking of, it looked like Reynolds was maybe trying to do what Hutcherson tried to do one lap ago and get a move done heading into Variante Alta. I was gonna say that would have been an outrageous move if he tried to get that done. However, not close enough to even think about doing it, heading through the braking zone into turn number 11 and 12. And here is a replay of that hard battling heading in to Tamburello, and Matt Kingsbury getting off a beautiful move around the outside through turn 2, gets that inside line through 3, and he clears a little bit sideways as well, so he added a drift in for style points. Very nicely put together race from Matt Kingsbury, holding on to that final podium position for now. But considering how dramatic this race has been, I would not be shocked. And we already had some drama happen with this. As you can see, at that point, they were pretty close. However, coming out of Tosa, something must have gone horribly wrong. You can see that gap slowly creeping up, it must be said. However, I think there may have been some sort of off-track drama. Kingsbury getting a little bit loose on corner entry, it must be said. I think they just lost that time on pace and pace alone, and considering how they had spent the opening part of that lap going side by side, it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if they tried to keep it calm. But nope, right as I say that, this was only a few moments ago. Hutcherson getting that move done again to slot his way back up into P3. This, at one point, it was a 4-4 fight. Now it's broken up into a 2-2. And here is Reynolds going for a move to take the lead of the race. He gets it done heading into Tamburello. I believe that was a replay of what happened not very long ago. Reynolds off the back of setting the fastest lap of the race at a 142.524, has taken command of it in that Porsche. Youngwall right behind that Mustang, though. He is not done for in this fight. We still got 13 minutes left to go, and honestly, Mike, I can't predict who's going to win it.
No, Blake Reynolds and Carter Hutchison definitely working their way up through the field and slicing through these Mustangs. But, you know, Christian Youngwall and Matt Kingsbury hold their own with these Mustangs. But as I said earlier, look who's lurking in that 5th spot now. Ray Kingsbury working his way back up into this group. So this is now a 3-way battle for that final podium position. Hutcherson, Kingsbury, and Kingsbury battling it out. And Ray looking to go on the inside of Matt coming down into turn 1. Not quite able to do it, but, you know, are these Mustangs just burning their tires up early and that's why they're starting to back up? Or, you know, are these other guys just waiting and saving their tires a little bit and then just coming to them? But I really think these Mustangs kind of ran away and hid early on and may have overheated their tires just a bit. And now the Italian and German engineering coming up and closing that gap. As you see our amateur car James Collins spinning out, that kind of Lambos are a real tricky car to get a hold of, and Collins just coming down into looks to be Ravazza in that first Ravazza section, and under braking gets a little tail happy there, but the second one loses it around and spins out. A little solo spin out action coming onto that second Ravazza section.
I feel like these tires are just screaming in pain at this point of the race, and I can't necessarily blame the tires. If I were being tortured as these tires have been all throughout this race, I wouldn't be shocked at all, considering that we're over 33 minutes into it. We're starting to feel the pressure. The drivers are starting to feel the pressure. We're feeling it here in the commentary booth. This is setting ourselves up for a pretty good finish. Reynolds starting to pull away, it must be said, from Youngwall. And getting back to the point that you mentioned, Mike, about those Mustangs and how they've managed their tires, I think it's a bit of both. I feel like there's something in that Mustang. It's not a small race car by any means. You park it next to a Ferrari and it just looks like a totally different animal. And it is a totally different animal. This car is big, it is heavy, it is a massive chunk of American muscle. However, it starts to muscle those tires off a little bit too much, and sadly, you get to this point in the race where it's just, you're starting to feel that burn, you're starting to feel the pain, and considering the track temperatures, we've mentioned this a lot throughout this broadcast, the track temperature is still ever increasing. 103 degrees now is the track temperature currently as the Kingsbury swap positions. Ray getting the move done on Matt to take another position, moving himself up into P4, and I have to say, credit where credit's due to the Kingsbury. The fact they picked different cars. I have covered races in the past where two different family members, it was a father and son duo that both drove in the exact same class, ran pretty much in the same section of the field, and had identical looking race cars, and I felt like I was going insane during that, it must be said, so I appreciate them for going in some different race cars. I don't think Youngwall appreciates the track limits rules here at Imola, though. They ran very wide, heading through Aqua Minerale just a few moments ago. They definitely picked up a slowdown, as now that gap between themselves and Reynolds has increased to about 2 seconds, and the gap between themselves and Hutchison has decreased to under a second now. So as much as Reynolds is starting to pull away, I feel like the fight for those final two podium positions is far from over.
No, absolutely, those final two positions are definitely not far from over. As Hutcherson closing that gap on Youngwall now as they come across the line. Youngwall comes by and out front Blake Reynolds with a 142.6, but Youngwall with a 44 flat with that slowdown that last time by. Carter Hutchison with a 42.6, so almost 2 seconds quicker, about a second and a half faster last time by for Carter Hutchison, as we see a little bump from Anthony Flores coming on the inside and under braking to take over that spot to work his way up into the 18th spot. But it's, remember that we got the AMs and the pros running together right now. The pros with the blue wingtips and blue number plates, and the amateurs with those green ones. But on the right side of our left side of our timing score, you see the blue and the red. The blue is designated as the pros, and that red is your amateur. So this is your leader right now in the amateur class, and that is Chandler Rubeck. He won last week. He did a good job, and look at that gap back to the 13th spot. So that's your second place driver in the amateur class, Kevin Bogart. But just a big reminder for the points series. The points are accumulated for the position that you finish. So, if you're amateur or pro, you're still getting the same number of points. So when you've got a gap of 5 positions back to that next gap guy in amateur, that is a huge advantage when you go into the season-ending standings.
Yeah, that is a very big gap that he has right now. Pretty much insurmountable in the dying stages of this race. Knowing my luck, I probably just jinxed and we're going to see Chandler Rubeck go off in the not-too-distant future. Here's one of the drivers that we saw contending for the M lead. Got spun out of it, though. That was Flores. He's had a moment. We're going to take a look to try and figure out exactly what it was. We saw him in the pits. Now we see him on track, heading through Villeneuve. Runs wide on corner exit, hits the wall, and ricochets back on track and collects an innocent bystander. Coming up right behind him, 2 Ferraris coming to blows, heading through Villeneuve. He ran wide, hang through. To be a bit more specific, it was turn number 6. It's kind of hard to figure out what exactly number the turns are heading through the Amash chicanes, and it was Horvath, Devin Horvath in the number 30 Ferrari right behind the Canadian, getting boinked off the track, and you can see, oh, very well held from Horvath. The fact he kept that car going in a straight line, it's probably handling very sour right now. That was a pretty significant whack to the side of that race car. Flores, meanwhile, he has had to tow back to the pits. I believe he is pretty much entirely done for in this race, relegated all the way down to 28th. Looking up and down the running order, we've got a fight between the two Kingsburys. Currently, it's Matt trying to chase right in front, and another swap going on between these two, it must be said. It looked like Ray Kingsbury, that is, kind of backed out of it, maybe serving a slowdown. He possibly picked that running wide through Piratella, as he's now lost another, actually, is that another spot? Yes, it is. That's Kevin Fanning getting the move done in the number 911 car. So at this point, maybe Kingsbury suffering from the track limits problems around this circuit, as side by side is Christian Youngwall and Hutcherson heading through Ravazza for the 23rd time in this race. It looks like it's going to be a drag race coming to the line. It's not going to be the white flag, though. It's not going to be the checkered, so a little bit less pressure in this run up, down the start finish, not so straight away. A Youngwall looking to try and hold off on P2. Hutcherson looking to do what he wanted to do earlier and try and take the lead of the race. He's not doing it, though. He's just trying to get past Youngwall for some small little style points. As you can see, very comedically, a car stopped off the track right in the back, a shot heading through Tamburello, as Youngwall still battling hard with Hutcherson. And did Hutcherson get the move done heading into Villeneuve? Yes, he did. Carter Hutcherson slips his way up into second, getting the move done in that Lamborghini. Very nicely played. And who was that car? I'm not sure if it was a BMW or a Mustang that was stopped heading through Tamburello. All I saw was just a car stopped, and here is the replay.
Yeah, it looks like Josh Hondo in that bright pink and purple Mustang coming into Tamburello, and hard under braking to that first section, and just gets a little loose. It looks like he slipped a tire off into the grass a little bit and got a little sideways. So, but good on him to stay there and not do a crazy rejoin right in front of your leaders. But you know, hit back into that battle for that second and third spot. Carter Hutchinson up into second now, trying to distance himself from Christian Youngwall, but he's got a lot of gap now as Blake Reynolds has opened up to over a 4-second advantage right now. He's out there in clean air, not having to battle anybody, and opening up that gap. He's been turning fast laps, 43 flat last time by for Blake, and that was his fastest lap so far, as we see him coming up that not so front straightaway, and going to cross the line this time by and see what kind of lap time he gets this time by, and comes across the line and comes off with a 42.8, so even quicker that time by, opening up to a 4.5-second advantage as Carter comes by with a 43.9, Youngwall with a 44.3. Matt Kingsbury in that 4 spot, 43.9, so he's pretty quick there too. So Kingsbury and Fanning battling it out for those Mustangs, as we got the Mustangs grouped together again, as Youngwall, Kingsbury, and Fanning all grouped together, 3 Mustangs in a row. But as we're closing in now on 3 minutes left to go, Ron, what do you think this is going to do? I mean, do you think this battle for second is going to stay here, or what do you think with only a couple laps left?
Ooh, that is a very good question. Honestly, I have a good feeling about Hutcherson. You know, we mentioned just a few moments ago about how some of these Mustangs, really all of them up and down the field, they're starting to drop back. They are losing pace. I mean, the tires, they've just been shredded here. The track temperature's hot. The track itself, there's no point of reprieve for these tires at all. There's, even on that start-finish, I mean, I call it the start-finish, not so straight away for a very good reason. Really, the only long straight that you have around this track where the tires can rest is between Tamburello and Villeneuve at the beginning of the lap, and between Acqua Minerale and Variante Alta. Besides that, though, the tires are feeling the burn. They are feeling the pain of driving these cars around this racetrack at the limit of grip, and I think the Mustangs have really just been hurt by that the most. Again, this is an open set series here in the SimCAR series, so don't have to worry about fixed setups or anything like that. However, I think the Mustangs have just been systematically taken out by their tires, and we're just seeing that put on full display here. Here's a replay of Joshua Suxy in the Corvette running wide heading through Villeneuve. I think that was just a one small little minor off-track moment, possibly. Nope, another spin, and ooh, that was Oh, who was that? I think that may have been Roman. That
Yeah.
was very close to running into him after that spin. Coming out of Toza. Oh, actually, no, there's Elias Roman right now. I believe that was Roman Rateau. That was pretty close to him. I know the name pronunciations are different. It's probably Elias Roman. I've just been adding a little bit of a European lilt to it throughout this broadcast. And here's another angle of it. And yes, and it was Roman Rateau in that Porsche. Probably experiencing some bad flashbacks of what happened so far in this race for him. Very standard avoiding action, heading through Toza to avoid T-boning that Corvette that was spinning right in front of him. But getting back to the point that you asked me, Mike, not very long ago, as we're coming to take the white flag this time by, I think Hutcherson is going to hold on to that P2. It's mainly the fight between Kingsbury and Fanning that I think I have my attention on. Actually, there's a nice fight developing right now in the AM category. This is for second and third in the AM fight, 14th and 15th overall. Bogart and Mofta pretty close, currently separated by about a quarter of a second with what we believe is about a lap and a half to go in this race. Blake Reynolds developing that gap now over 5 seconds in front of Hutcherson. He is just entirely checked out in this race. Still pretty evenly matched pace-wise, so that gap isn't growing. However, it's not really contracting either at this point. This is Reynolds to lose, and meanwhile, that fight between Hutcherson and Youngwall looking to prove me wrong and play me like a fiddle. That is some pretty heroic stuff. That gap was down to about a quarter of a second at the end of that start-finish straightaway. However, I think once we get into these corners, the Mustang really just starts to struggle. Those tires are cooked on Christian Youngwall's number 55 Mustang GT3 race car. He is feeling the burn, and I gotta say, credit where credit's due to Youngwall. You know, he led for a decent chunk of this race. I believe even considering he's lost the lead and it looks like he's going to be finishing on the podium, maybe a little bit farther back if he has some sort of moment. We'll just have to wait and see in the final half lap of this race. Credit where credit's due to him. He put on a pretty good show, and to drag that Mustang up to third, very nicely played. And we got a fight for the Mustangs between Kingsbury and Fanning. This was a fight that I was going to say I have my attention on. Those two pretty close at the moment. Another fight developing here. Still between Bogart and Mofta. They're on the last lap of the race, currently separated by barely any air, heading into the Villeneuve chicane for the final time. Looks like these two are going to be duking it out all the way until the checkered flag of this race. Kevin Fanning still in front of Ray Kingsbury at the north end of the field, and Youngwall not able to get the move done on Reynolds. But meanwhile, at the very front, it is going to be Reynolds. Blake Reynolds taking the win in the number 66 car and pulling off the double here at Imola. He won in the sprint race and he wins in the feature as well. A photo finish coming right to the line. Youngwall in the Mustang ends up winning it over Hutcherson, who slowed coming to the line. I'm curious, what in the world happened to Hutcherson? He is still slow. Was fuel possibly a factor in that? Did he run out of gas coming to take the checkered flag, or did he just celebrate a little bit too early and lift out the gas too soon? In a dramatic series of events, Christian Youngwall in that number 55 Mustang ends up squeaking out P2, and Hutcherson is towed back, so I'm not entirely convinced there's enough fuel in that race car for him to see the finish. But right now, looking at the fight that we saw for P2 and P3 in AM and P14 and P15 overall, Bogart, it looks like he is going to hold off the challenge from Mofta right behind. Those two are going to end up line astern. But Mike, what do you think of that finish between Youngwall and Hutcherson? That didn't look natural to me at all.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's, you know, these guys are always trying to play, especially with an open setup. They're always trying to play that game, and you want to make sure you get just enough fuel. You don't want to waste anything. So he may have been using just a little too much fuel and ran out of fuel coming down that front straightaway, and that cost him second spot. So, you know, he is the leader in points right now, so that could be the difference at the end of the season. You never know, but great job from Christian Youngwall holding that Mustang down. I mean, three Mustangs in the top 5 finishing order. That is pretty impressive for the big old behemoth of a Mustang. So great finish from those guys, and a great job. And then we didn't even talk about the end of the finish, but your amateur winner of Chandler Rubeck taking the win again. So we had back-to-back winners in both classes. As we got our overall standings right here, your top 10 in the first spot was Blake Reynolds, Christian Youngwald finishing in second, Carter Hutcherson finishing in third, Matt Kingsbury in fourth, Kevin Fanning rounded out your top 5. Then you had Ray Kingsbury in 6th, Elias Roman in 7th, your first place amateur Chandler Rubeck in 8th, Justin Nasir in 9th, and that pretty trippy 80s paint job. And then rounded out your top 10, Steven Savigny in the 10th spot.
And then looking right outside the top 10, Brandon Lambert with a very good recovery drive. He ends up in P11. Paul, I will leave it at Paul in the number 77 Penguin RC Racecraft Academy car. He ends up in P12. Roman Rateau with a very good recovery drive. Roman ends up this race in lucky number P13, which just about sums up his luck in this race meeting. Had a good chance to win in both races. However, it all comes to naught. And then it's Kevin Bogart and Marwan Mafta ending up this race in P14 and P15 respectively. Brian Sohn in 16th. That's going to be the P17 runner who put on a very interesting race meeting, and must be said, and got involved in a collision. Horvath going to end up this race in 17th. That's going to be another American, Daniel Coletta, ending up this race in P18 for Quokka Racing, a very nice name, if I do say so myself. And if we can scroll through possibly and put a little bit of WD-40 in our graphics here. Ebersol going to end up this race in 19th, and Tim Brokaw is going to round out the top 20. I think, hopefully, I believe we may have a slight little technical issue with my colleague Mike. Hopefully we can get that fixed between now and the end of this. Oh, there we go. Okay, it sounded like you're abducted by a UFO, or you're talking from a closet from the other side of the room there. Sorry about that.
No, I had my co-host with me. My dog was barking, so I had to refrain from that. So Travis De Flumer finishing in the 21st spot. Josh Stoltz finishing in 22nd. Justin Lin in 23rd, James Collins in 24th. In the 25th spot, you had Nathan Fennell with Josh Ondo finishing in 26th, Justin Succi finishing in the 27th spot, Anthony Flores in 28th, Justin Hall in 29th, John. Wow. My guy Justin Hall getting booed out. So tough break. John finishing in the 30th spot, Rob in 31st, Paul 32nd, and Gary in the 33rd spot. So, Ron, I think we've got our overall winner, Blake Reynolds, running around the paddock. Do you think you can pull him in for an interview?
I think I shall. I'll grab him by the collar and drag him into the commentary booth, have a quick word with him before we possibly talk to our AM winner. Let's bring him in to the booth here. And Blake, congratulations on the victory, and I believe both of the races from tonight. A very strong showing from you here at Imola. Talk us through it.
Yeah, fun race. I think I told y'all last week I wasn't going to like this race. I can't remember, but... Oh, well, I'm a liar? Okay. Well, turns out car's pretty good. So it was a little hard to pass those Mustangs. They had about 10th and a half, maybe 2/10 on the straightaway. But if you exited that last corner right tucked under the rear wing, you could carry with them all the way down the straightaway. And then, depending on the driver, you could outbrake them. I used that a lot to get through the top 5, and yeah, it was just fun race overall. It's in the sprint race, I was racing Romain, and he made a mistake there in the bottom of the, I don't know what that turn's called, the bottom of the hill in sector 2. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Aqua Minerale.
Sure. So he got in a little hard there and lost the rear, and it got in the TC, and I barely avoided him. I think I netcode 4x'd him, and he got shuffled because of that, but I was able to hold off Carter there. The Lambo is really good in his hands, so that's going to be a championship throughout the season, me and Carter, I think. And then the inverts behind all those Mustangs, me, Carter Ray, Kevin. Looking through here, I think it was Elias was the other one. Yeah, fun stuff coming through the field. You never know if you're actually going to get through the invert, so it's always fun to do that, and it feels good to get my brand new purple Soul Pet car. I didn't have one last week. I have a purple one this week.
Well, in the end here at Imola, you came out smelling like a rose, so I'm sure the skepticism you had 1 week ago in the post-race interview after the race at VIR, that has pretty much entirely diminished. But next time out, we're heading to another Grand Prix track, albeit one that isn't on the F1 calendar anymore. Portimao, a somewhat new track in the world of iRacing. How do you think that race is going to be in 1 week's time?
So I like that track. However, my iRacing stats, IMSA was there like 2 or 3 months ago. I was not good. But I like it. So maybe it's the opposite here. Maybe I'll run like trash, but I'll have fun the whole time. Yeah, I look forward to that. This Porsche has been doing pretty good. We thought we were going to be pretty bad at Daytona. I think I won the sprint race there, so I think we're going to get stronger throughout the season yet.
Well, maybe a little bit of reverse psychology could play to your benefit/detriment throughout the rest of this season. But Blake, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary booth and giving us your insight from your perspective behind the wheel. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, sure. Ray Kingsbury for working on this setup. This setup was immaculate in my opinion. It just held onto the tires very well. Pretty much 20 minutes in and on to the end was perfect. Solpec Racing, of course, or Solpec Precision Racing, Abruzzi, Penguin RC for sponsor SimCAR in the championship, and you guys for broadcasting. I'm sure you guys do a pretty good job. I watched the VOD last week and had a good time.
Alrighty, well, thank you for the kind words, Blake. Congratulations on the victory this evening, and excited to see you back out on track at Portimao in 1 week's time. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you.
And that was our winner from both of these races in the pro category and overall, Blake Reynolds. And Mike, would you like to have a chat with our AM winner, Chandler Rubik?
Yes, I will. This is our second week in a row. Chandler Rubik taking the win in the AM class. Chandler, how was your race? I mean, you seem to be just kind of like last week. You kind of separated yourself from the rest of the AMs and it just kind of hold your own for a while.
I wish it was as calm as that. It was very stressful. Let's put it this way. I wasn't expecting to be talking to you guys this week. I made a fuel calculation error that we didn't realize till the end.
So while we're on the topic of that, is that what happened to Carter? Since you guys are teammates, I'm sure you guys were talking.
Correct.
We saw him slow down coming down to the front straightaway, and that's what we thought. So that does confirm Ron's story that he did run out of fuel. So were you coughing coming around that last turn too, or were you okay?
I had exactly the right amount of fuel to get to the line. I was 3.1 when I crossed the line, and my car was doing 3.05. So, yeah.
That is close, man. Close.
I don't know how Carter made it to the end. He told me his fuel number when we were questioning it with 2 to go, and I don't know what he did, but he managed to save it. He was 3 liters of fuel less than me.
Wow. That is pretty impressive, but what's really impressive is just watching you run away from these AMP guys. I mean, you had 5 spots onto Kevin Bogart in that second spot. So I mean, you said it was pretty exciting the whole time, but you seem pretty cool as a cucumber when you're out there running. Every time we jump back to you, you were clean and away from everybody. Did you have a lot of action, or did you have any runoffs, or was it pretty steady for you?
I had a few runoffs, not too bad. Justin and Steven and the vets gave me a pretty exciting first half of the race. I had to keep up and manage their pace. They run a little less downforce, and I'm running full downforce, so it was kind of a game of trying to figure out how to get each other to make mistakes.
Right. So we got still about 5 more races to go. Do you have any of these tracks that you got a circle on the calendar or something that you're looking forward to run on?
I'm really looking forward to Bathurst. I'm pretty comfortable there.
Man after my own heart. That is one of my favorites. That one and Belle Isle are probably my 2 favorite tracks, along with VIR. So 3 of my favorite tracks on this calendar. But Panorama should definitely be a super exciting race. But great job today, Chandler. congratulations. Is there anyone you give a shout out to on your way out?
Some sim racing guys, SimCAR putting on a great race in league. I've been having a ton of fun with this. Penguin RC for hosting. Everybody else involved. You guys for broadcasting. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you for putting on a great show, Chandler. Congratulations, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
You too.
Thank you. That was Chandler Rubeck taking the win in the amateur class for the second week in a row. But upcoming races here on Slow Motion Broadcasting on Saturday, August 3rd. You're going to have the Formula V's running at Roots Kogan, which is a very interesting track to run. And it should lead to some exciting racing. And then on Sunday, August 4th at 1:45 Eastern, you got the Formula Fords running at Hockenheim, another fantastic German track. And then on Sunday at 3:45 Eastern, Spec Fords at Okayama, which with the track temperatures at Okayama, usually that should lead to some very spicy racing. And if you're looking to join some more awesome GT3 action, come back next Thursday, August 8th at 9 p.m. Eastern for some more GT3 action at Algarve. So, Ron, the first time in the booth with us here in the SimCAR League, what were your takeaways from this?
Well, incredibly exciting from start to finish. We had some good strategic racing, didn't have to worry about pit stops. It was just 45 minutes of heart-pumping racing action from start to finish. All these drivers pushing it to the absolute limit. It was incredible to watch, and I'm sure in 1 week's time at Portimao, that is going to be exciting as well. Whole lot of elevation change, whole lot of stuff for these drivers to try and wrap their heads around, and some of these drivers may be running at that track for what could be their first or second time, so some drivers may be trying to get their toes wet around that circuit. We'll just have to wait and see how that race is like in 1 week's time. Whole lot of stuff coming up here on Apex Racing TV. You went through the schedule, Mike. The Weekend Warrior stuff is always exciting. I am very happily going to be a part of the Formula V broadcast this upcoming Saturday, which is actually at Brands Hatch rather than Rudskogen. But either way, Rudskogen, another fun track, and I believe that is possibly going to appear on the schedule in the not-too-distant future. We'll just have to wait and see. But the Weekend Warrior stuff, I've covered all three of those series in the past. It is some great stuff that we have here on Slow Motion, and gives you all more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well, so you never miss a single thing going on here on Slow Motion Broadcasting here on YouTube. But I think for this broadcast here, for round number 3 of the SimCAR Championship, that will just about do it. So, for myself, Ron Maunz, Mike Braun joining me in the commentary booth, and Adam Thompson doing a fantastic job in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you all again at Portimao in 1 week's time.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was
our
the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you
It
know,
is.
life sucks sometimes, and you need
Yes.
the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new
Conspiracy
content.
confirmed.
But
Yes.
but